The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series, Bluebeam 101. Welcome to day 2. We'll be going over measurement basics. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today on day 2. We're going to get started in just a few moments. I want to allow for all of our participants that were registered, make sure that they can get in and joined and assigned in GoToWebinar. For those that have already joined, welcome. My name is Michael Boatwright. I'm a software training specialist here with Bluebeam Global Services, and I'm going to be your trainer all week as we go through this webinar series. So for those that have already joined, so I do always like to start with a question of the day. So for today's question of the day, please go ahead and find the GoToWebinar questions panel. It should be located on the right-hand side of your screen. And go ahead and answer my question. If you had to choose any kind of superpower to have whenever you're on the job, from the time you start working to the time that you clock out, what superpower would you choose to assist you through your day? If you can go ahead, type out those answers in the GoToWebinar questions panel. I greatly appreciate it. Myself and the rest of the Bluebeam Global Services staff are going to be sitting by, answering and responding to those answers. So thank you all so much. Thank you for joining, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. All right, hello once again. Thank you everyone so much for joining me today. We're right here at the top of the hour. I'm just going to give it one more minute before we dive in. I still have a lot of participants that are still joining and getting connected into our session, so I want to give them that time to do so. So in that little bit of time, in that next 1 minute, for those that have just joined, I have put out a question of the day. For today's question of the day, please go ahead and answer that in the GoToWebinar questions panel. It should be located on the right-hand side of your screen. And please let us know if you could choose from one superpower to get a hold of and have from the time that you start working to the time that you stop at the end of the day. What superpower would you choose? If you can go ahead and type out your answer in the GoToWebinar questions panel, we would greatly appreciate it. Myself and some of the other Bluebeam Global Services staff are standing by responding to those answers. So we'll get started in just one more minute. Thank you all so much. Alrighty, we're 2 minutes past the top of the hour. I do want to go ahead and dive on in and get started. For those that have already joined, I want to thank you all so much for participating in my question of the day, telling us what kind of superpower you would have on the job. We got some fantastic answers from mind reading, time travel, the ability to duplicate yourself. So thank you all so much. I always like to point out a question of the day to kind of wake us up and get us ready for training. But it's also important to note as well is that GoToWebinar questions panel where you responded to my question of the day, that's also going to be where you can ask questions throughout our lectures. Anytime this week as we go through our webinar series Bluebeam 101, I have a few of my fantastic staff members standing by to answer any questions that come in. So if you want to have any questions in the next 30 minutes as we go through material, just make sure you type those out in that same exact questions panel, and they're going to be happy to get back to you. So today in our webinar series on day 2 for Bluebeam 101, we're going to be going over measurement basics. As always, my name is Michael Boatwright. I'm a software training specialist here with Bluebeam Global Services, and I'm going to be your trainer throughout the week as we go through each one of our lectures. As I always like to talk about at the start of our lecture series, each one of our webinars this week are designed to help you get a taste of what is possible in Review. Each of these courses is taken from a portion of our training that is available for purchase. So if you're interested in learning more about all the different kinds of trainings we offer, you can always reach out to us at the email training@bluebeam.com, or you can simply send us a message in the questions panel. We'll get your contact and reach out with more information at the end of training today. Now that kind of does it for our introductions. Let's briefly talk about our schedule for this week. So yesterday on Monday, we went through our PDF markup basics. We're going to be building on our foundational knowledge that we talked about yesterday, but in today, we'll be talking about measurement basics and applying a lot of those same principles to measurements in a quantity takeoff. So we're going to be talking about that today. Tomorrow, we'll switch gears a little bit, talk about drawing management basics. On Thursday, we'll talk about our collaborative software studio basics. And then we will conclude our webinar series with a brand new Bluebeam 101 lecture on Friday called Bluebeam Cloud Basics. So even if you participated in Bluebeam 101 before, Bluebeam Cloud Basics on Friday is going to be a brand new course. So I highly recommend checking that out on Friday. For those of you it's your first time joining in Bluebeam 101, we do host these webinars on a monthly basis. So if you are unable to attend any of these webinars, but you would like to attend next month, I also highly recommend checking out our social media platforms on the right-hand side of your screen. If you give us a follow, you're going to be able to stay up to date with all the announcements that Bluebeam has for you, especially Bluebeam Global Services, and the next time that we host Bluebeam 101 as well. So if you're not already, make sure you give us a follow. Otherwise, let's also talk about our agenda for today and what are we going to be talking about in measurement basics. So for our measurement basics agenda, so the very first thing that I want to address is the profile that I'm going to be utilizing today. I briefly mentioned yesterday that I customized my profile and customized a few toolbars. I'm going to show you the takeoff profile, the default that's already available in Review, and a few of the changes that I've made to that profile for today's training. Now, we are only going to talk very briefly about the profile because the rest of our agenda is going to take up a lot of time. So once we've kind of established our profile and how my screen looks, I also want to begin with calibration. It's going to be our first main module of the day. Of course, for calibration, before we ever begin taking measurement markups on a drawing, we have to ensure that our drawing is calibrated and that the scale is set accurately. So I'm going to go over two different methods when it comes to setting the scale on a drawing and verifying that it is correct. Once we have verified that our scale is correct, that's when we'll dive into some basic measurement markups. We'll be talking about the length tool, the area tool, and the polylength tool, how to place, customize, and save those customizations as well. And then just like yesterday, we will conclude this process in the markups list. Talk about all the metadata that's being stored each and every time we place a measurement markup and how we can better manipulate that data to assist us in our work. So that's going to be our agenda for today. We do have quite a lot to cover, so I do want to dive right on into our software and get started with our profile. Now, as I did mention yesterday, I am using the latest and greatest software that we have available. So I am currently on Review 21 that is available to all of our customers through the Bluebeam store. I won't point out too many differences between 21. If you're interested in all the changes that are coming with Review 21, I highly recommend checking out bluebeam.com. However, I will address, once again, just like yesterday, I am currently signed in, which is the first step whenever working within Review 21. You have to make sure you're signed in. If I select on that username up here in the top right-hand corner, I can also see the region that I'm working with and the package that I have as well. But with that being said, let's talk a little bit about how my screen looks and how I've set up my profile today. You'll notice that I have a toolbar up here with all of my measurement markups, just like I was utilizing yesterday. I have my toolbars here. Each one of these icons represents a different measurement markup. With a single left click, I can utilize those. The toolbars that I was utilizing yesterday have now been moved. I've placed them over here on the right-hand side of my screen. In order to adjust the location of my toolbars on my interface, I'm simply clicking and dragging this dotted line right here. That dotted line is going to indicate where the toolbar starts, and from there I can click and drag and move them around my interface as I need to. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and move these back over here. That way it looks a little bit cleaner on my screen. Now, if you want to start a quantity takeoff, we do have a default profile that is available for you. In order to access this profile and open it up on your screen, you're going to find it up here in the top left-hand corner under the Review menu. If you give that a single left click, you can hover down here to where it says Profiles, and you'll notice that under Profiles, we have the Quantity Takeoff Profile. Now notice if I give that a single left click, it's going to completely change the way my screen looks. It's going to open up my markups list down here at the very bottom. It's going to show me my measurements panel over here on the left, and then it's going to move my toolbars around a little bit and bring them over here on the right. So essentially for today, I started with this profile, I made my appropriate changes, I moved my toolbars, I customized my markups list, and then I created a brand new profile. You'll notice it's titled Takeoff Training. So that's the one I created today. Now if I switch back over to that with a single left click, once again, you'll notice that my screen comes back to exactly the way it was. I have my toolbars back up here once again, toolbar over here on the side, and now I'm ready to begin working. If you are interested in learning more about how to customize and save profiles, it is something that we go over very heavily in our paid trainings, so please make sure to reach out to us with more info. But that being said, let's talk about our drawing and how we're going to work with this sheet today. So in order to begin placing some markups on my drawing, the first thing that I want to do is I want to set the scale, and I also want to verify that that scale is accurate. Now, if I scroll in here to the bottom right-hand corner of my document, I'm going to see that we already have a set scale. So in this case, the scale should be set at 1/8 of an inch equals 1 foot. So I can see that that's already content that's present on my drawing. Now, in order for me to double verify and check to see what the scale is currently set on my drawing, I can see the scale in a number of places. One of the easiest ways to find it is actually going to be down here on your navigation bar. On your navigation bar, you can find that scale all the way over here on the right-hand side. So you can see it's currently set at 1/8 of an inch equals 1 foot. But how did I get here, and how did I set this scale originally? Well, if we're looking at setting our scale for the first time, I can actually select this. This is a button I can click on my interface. With the left click, when I open it up, it's going to bring up this dialog box, and it's going to ask me a few different things to choose from. Up here at the top, I can designate and choose what pages I'm looking to set my scale and apply my scale with. In this case, I'm only currently working with one page, so I have that current page selected. But what if I was working with a very large document and I wanted to set scales on multiple sheets at once? Well, if I click that drop down right here, that's going to be where I can choose from that custom range or even all pages that I'm working with when I want to set that scale. From there, down here, I have my first option to setting my scale, and that's going to be with a preset option. If I click the drop down here, you're going to see all of the preset scales that are available for you in Revu. These are all defaults, and they should already be installed in your machine and on your interface. Starting up here at the top, it's going to be starting with 1/32 of an inch equals 1 foot. As I scroll down, you're going to see more and more measurements, and then I even have my metric units down here at the bottom as well. So in this case, I already have my selection. I'm going to go ahead and select it again. I have that 1/8 of an inch equals 1 foot. I have the option to choose to create a separate Y scale if I'm working with like a civil drawing or something that requires a different Y scale. And then down here at the bottom, I can choose the precision of my measurements. Now, if I click the drop down for my precision, you'll notice that it starts with the 1. So essentially what that's going to do, it's going to round all of my measurements to the nearest whole inch. From there, if I continue scrolling down, I'll have everything rounded to the nearest half inch, quarter inch, and so on. So I can choose how precise my measurements are showing up on my drawing based on what precision I select. In the case of today's example, I'm going to go ahead and select 1, and then from there I can click Apply Scale. And now my scale has been applied, and I can verify and see it down here. Now, at any time when we select a scale for a drawing, the next thing that we want to do is create a quick measurement just to verify that that scale is accurate. Now, this is where we recommend utilizing the length tool. The length tool is an easy way to measure the distance between 2 points very quickly to just verify that your scale is accurate. Now, my length measurement's already present up here on my toolbar. It's going to look like this little icon here. I'm going to go ahead and just give that a single left click, and then I'm going to select my first point here. Now you'll notice that as I zoom in here, all of my measurement markup tools actually snap to the content on my drawing. That's a default setting for all of my measurement markups. So in this case, now I can kind of bring it here to the center. You may see that little square here. That's just designating exactly where it's snapping to make my measurements as precise as possible. Once it's snapped to that line, I can go ahead and give it a single left click, and then I can extend my line from there. Now, if I'm looking to make sure that my line is also as straight as possible, I can hold the Shift key down on my keyboard. That's just going to ensure that no matter how I move my mouse up or down, my line will remain straight. So once again, my measurements remain accurate, and then it'll snap to my second point here, and I can give it a single left click to place. So you'll notice that I've now created that measurement. I now have my length from the distance between my 2 points, and that length is accurate. It should show up at 16 feet, which is exactly what's reflected here. So I know and I've verified that my scale is accurate on my drawing. Now, this is a great way. Now, I could technically begin placing my measurement markups. However, I will also want to show an optional or second way that you can create the scale for your drawing. Let's say if for whatever reason this may be incorrect, your preset scale may not work if the document's been altered or changed in size, or maybe you don't have this available on your drawing. What's an alternative method to create a scale for your drawing if this isn't available or inaccurate? Well, in this case, what I'm going to do is first I'm going to delete my length measurement here. I'm going to come back down here to the bottom where we set our scale originally. I'm going to give that a left click. And then instead of using a preset, let's use a second option and let's use the custom option here. So if I give the custom option a left click, I'm going to show you how to calibrate your measurement markup tools with this option right here. So after selecting custom, I'm going to go ahead and select on calibrate. And then once I've selected calibrate, it's going to tell me to select 2 points of a known dimension to calibrate my measurement tools. So now I need to find a known dimension on my drawing. So I'm going to select OK. I'm going to zoom out, and then I'm going to hold my spacebar down to get my pan tool to kind of navigate around my drawing. So in this case, I can see this is a known measurement here. So it says it's 8 feet and 9 inches, the distance between these 2 points. So just like I used my length tool, I'm going to start on this first point, give this a single left click, and then hold my shift key down, keeping my line straight, and then selecting on the second point here. So what have I done? Well, essentially I've measured the distance between those 2 points. Revu is telling me that this is the total distance, so it's 1.09 inches. And now I'm going to tell Revu what that should be equal to. So I have my known measurement here. So that distance should technically be 8 feet, 9 inches. So with 8 feet, 9 inches being that total distance between these 2 points, verifying it because it's a known dimension already on my drawing, I can also change my precision once again if I need to, or adjust the pages I'm working with. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just select apply scale. Notice that when I apply that scale, my number is now changed down here. So here's my new scale set. And then once again, with that calibrated tool, I want to once again verify that that scale is correct. So I'm going to come back, find my length measurement, and then quickly measure the distance once again between 2 points of a known dimension. I'll start here and kind of coast over to those 2 points. It looks like it's saying it's 17 feet 6 inches, which if I look here is going to be accurate. So that's a secondary way that you can calibrate your measurement markup tools manually without having to use a preset scale. For whatever reason, if you don't have one available or if it's not showing up as accurate, more often than not, we may have trouble with preset scales if the document sizing has been altered at any point. So that's the 2 different ways that we can set and verify that the scale is accurate on our drawing. Now that we know and we're sure our scale is accurate, I can now continue and begin placing some measurement markup tools. So utilizing the same drawing, I'm going to kind of snap back over here, and I'm going to scroll over to my office located here. So it's going to be Office 115D. Now for Office 115D, I'm going to be placing some carpet in this office. Now because I'm placing carpet in the office, I need to find the total area measurement for the flooring in Office 115D. So in order to do so, I'm going to use my area measurement tool. The tool is going to be located right up here. I'm going to give that a single left click. And then once I've selected it, I'm going to start up here in the top left-hand corner of that office. Notice that my tool is snapping to my lines on my drawing. And I'm going to have it snap right here to that corner. Now, because my office is perfectly square, it's a very simple measurement to take. Once I'm starting in this corner, I can hold the left click down with my mouse, click, and drag, bringing it down here to the bottom right-hand corner, and then letting go from there. So now I have encompassed the entire office. I've now found the total square footage for that flooring, and this is going to be my measurement for the carpet that I need to install. Now from here, the next thing that I want to do, and something that we talked about yesterday when we were adjusting our markup tools, is I want to customize this particular markup. I want to change its visual properties, I want to change its subject line, and I want to save it so that I can easily reuse it over and over again in my tool chest. I'll go ahead and open up my tool chest now. That icon once again is over here on the left. I can give that a left click here. Notice once again, I've turned off a lot of my tool sets just like I did yesterday to kind of free up some space on my screen. Just to reiterate on how to do that, if you click that drop down arrow up here, you can turn on or off tool sets, those default ones that you have available, and you can also select manage tool sets once again to create your own, just like we did yesterday. I've already done that for today. I've created my training takeoff toolset. I have it available right here. This is going to be where I'm saving all of my measurement markup tools. So now that I got my tool chest open, I know exactly where I'm saving it. Let's make some customizations to this area measurement before we continue. In order to make those customizations, I'm going to select on the markup with a single left click. Once it's selected, I'm going to come up here to the properties toolbar. And just like we did yesterday, I'm going to adjust the properties of my markup. Now scrolling all the way over here on the left-hand side, I have the drop down located right here. I'm going to click that drop down, and if you remember from yesterday, the first thing that I always start with is the subject of my markup. The default subject for this markup is area measurement, but I want to get more descriptive with this. Knowing that it's an area measurement really doesn't do me much good in understanding what I'm taking a measurement of. So instead, I'm going to delete this and categorize this as a flooring measurement for that subject. So now I know what area I'm taking for our office. I know that I'm taking the area of our flooring. However, notice that I have an additional option, unlike the markup tools that we used yesterday. Right below my subject, I have a new category called label. So the label is going to function a lot like a subject for a markup. It's a customizable text input, and it's left intentionally for all of our measurement markup tools just to kind of add an extra level of customization. Very useful in this case if I'm installing different types of materials for that flooring. Maybe I'm installing multiple different kinds of carpets, or I'm installing concrete flooring, rubber, tile, or so on. So in this case, I can keep my subject to flooring, but utilizing my label, I can get a little bit more descriptive for what exactly kind of material am I using for this flooring. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and type out my label, and I'm going to call it Carpet 01. So it'd be the first kind of carpet that I'm installing. Once I've categorized this markup, I've created that subject and that label. Those are both now being tracked in the markups list. I can now continue through and start adjusting some of the visual properties on the properties toolbar. So starting with my line color located right here, I'm actually going to adjust my line weight and bring my line weight all the way down to 0 so I don't see any outline of the markup. Since it's an area measurement, I don't need to see the outline, I just want to add a fill. So I'm actually going to bring my line weight down all the way to 0. That way it's no longer visible on my drawing. So instead of seeing my line, instead I want to add a quick fill color. I'm going to go ahead and just choose this pastel cyan. And then just like we did yesterday, I'm also going to add a highlight. That way I can see all of that underlying content from my fill color. Notice I also have additional options. If I want to adjust the fill opacity or add a hatch pattern, I can do so. And I also have this new option here called Show Segment Values. If I select on Show Segment Values, it's actually going to give me the individual segment values for each side of my office. This can be extremely useful if I have to pre-cut the carpet before bringing it into the office. I need to know individual values for lengths. So I can turn this on or off as I go utilizing the properties toolbar as well. I can also adjust my units of measurement. So in this case, my current area is being measured in square feet. But what if I cut my carpet and measure it based on square yards? I can click our drop down right here and I can choose square yards instead, adjusting how the measurement is calculated here in the center in that caption. Speaking of our caption, notice that I can see the type of carpet, Carpet 01. I can see the total measurement. If I want to adjust the information that's inside of my caption, I can do so with this next option over here called Show Caption. From there, let's say maybe I wanted to see total length. I could select length. Notice it'll appear down here for me. I can also adjust wall area, volume, depth if I add a depth as well. And I can turn on or off these captions as I go based on what kind of information I want to see here in the center. So we just have some additional property options when it comes to customizing our measurement markup tools. The very last thing I'm going to do for this measurement, however, is just adjust my font color very quickly. Let's just make that a dark blue. Now, before I save this markup, the very last thing that I want to do, you notice that the caption sits right in the center, and it's kind of right on top of my Office 115 title block. Well, it's really not going to do me much good. It's kind of difficult to see, so I want to adjust and move where this caption is located. In order to change where it's located on my interface and on my drawing, all I need to do is hold the Shift key down on my keyboard, a left click down with my mouse. Notice that the entire markup becomes gray, and then I can click and drag and move this around, adjusting it and placing it down here now in the bottom right-hand corner. So that looks fantastic so far. So my markup's now been customized. I have that label, I have that subject, those customizations, and now I want to save it. So in order to quickly save my markup, I'm just going to right-click, hover down here where it says Add to Tool Chest, And notice that I have my tracking takeoff tool set. So I'm going to give that a left click and then save that markup right there. Now that it's been saved, I can continue finding additional areas on offices where I'm installing Carpet 01. So in this case, let's come over to Office 112C. I'm going to reuse this markup. Now, once again, if I give it a single left click directly from that tool set, notice that it's not only copying the visual properties, the subject and the label, but it's also copying the exact same size and shape as the original markup. We talked about this yesterday as well. This is because this markup is currently being reused in drawing mode. Anything that's in drawing mode in the tool set is going to copy all visual properties as well as the exact same size and shape. Now, if I want to manipulate the size and the shape but retain those visual properties, I need to switch this markup to properties mode in this tool set. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to switch this markup by double clicking on the icon. I notice now the icon has now changed, and now I can place the markup in Office 112C. Now you'll also notice this is not a perfect square, so I can't simply click and drag from the top left-hand corner to take my area measurement. So in this case, instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in this top corner once again, but instead of clicking and holding, I'm just going to give it a single left click, and I'm going to click individual corners of my office to take my full area measurement. We here at training, we call this the rubber band method. You'll notice because it kind of looks like we're dragging a rubber band around the entire office. And then once I reach my final point, I can double click, and I've now found my new area. Once again, all of those units of measurement, my caption, those colors are all copied over. I've just manipulated the size and the shape by switching that markup to properties mode. And then from there, I can hold that left click with that shift key and that left click and click and drag my caption around. So that's going to be our area measurement tool. The very next tool that I'm going to utilize very quickly is going to be our polylength tool. So let's say after my carpet's installed, I also want to install some baseboard in Office 115D. So I need to find the perimeter of our office. Now I have two different tools that I can utilize for perimeter. I can utilize the perimeter tool, and I can also utilize the polylength tool. Both of them are very valuable tools, and both will allow you to find perimeter. The only difference and kind of takeaway that I want to mention before I find the perimeter of this office is that if you are utilizing the polylength tool will not only allow you to find perimeter, but it will also allow you to add a rise drop to your measurement. So perhaps you're installing plumbing, and with those pipes, you need to also add a vertical rise or drop. The polylength tool is going to be the best tool for you. The perimeter tool will always allow you to find perimeter. However, you cannot add a rise drop utilizing that tool. Now, in the case of today, I don't need to add a rise drop since I'm installing baseboard. So instead, I'm just going to select on my perimeter tool, and then I'm going to find the perimeter of Office 115D. Now, in order to do so, once again, just like our rubber band method, I'm going to start right here and give this a single left click, snapping over to that content. And then from there, I'm just going to left click around our office, finding that total perimeter. Double clicking once I'm finished. And now I have that entire measurement. So here's going to be my perimeter measurement. Just like we did before, I want to customize this and save this for easy reuse. So I'm going to select on that perimeter measurement, start up here in the properties toolbar, and then once again, we always start with our subject, and in this case, with the label as well. So our subject, let's go ahead and delete that perimeter measurement. Instead, we're going to call our subject base, because I'm measuring the base of our office. But then once again, as I mentioned, that label is going to be really good when it comes to type of material. Maybe I'm measuring multiple kinds of bases and installing multiple kinds of materials. In this case, my label is going to go ahead and be wood because I'm installing a wood baseboard in this particular office. Once my subject and my label have been categorized and customized, I'm going to go ahead and change some of those visual properties as well. So let's go ahead. I'm going to change my line color here. I'm going to go ahead and make that a green. I can increase my line weight as well. So I'm going to bring that line weight up to 3. And then I have additional options. I can choose how my line starts and my line ends. I have these same options to also add a highlight. So if I want to see the surrounding wall, I can do so. And then I can also show those segment values. So maybe once again, I need to see those segment values. I can see the individual segment values for each side of the wall for my perimeter as well when it comes to cutting my baseboard and breaking it into this office. Same options for our units and our show caption. But in the case of this customization, all I want to do is come over here. I'm going to select on font color, and I'm also going to have that match with a green as well. Now my caption is a little wonky. It looks like it's sideways. I can actually use this blue dot right here, this blue control point, to kind of click and drag and bring this around, just making that a little bit straighter. That way it's a little bit easier to see. I can also hold that shift key, hold that left click, and then once again click and drag to kind of adjust its location. That way it's a little bit easier for me to see as well. Now, once again, now that I've made my customizations, I have my caption, my perimeter tool looks good to go. I'm going to go ahead and right click on that markup tool. Once again, save it into my tool chest. And now I can reuse it. I'll come back down to that same exact office where we found the area, office 112C. And utilizing my new perimeter tool, I'll double click to turn it into properties mode, and then click to find the perimeter of this office as well, with those single left clicks in each corner of this office. Finishing, I'm going to double click here at the very end. I have my measurement located right up here at the top. And now I've created and reused that measurement markup tool and found the perimeter of that office. So I'm running a little bit short on time. So the very last thing that I want to do, I'm going to conclude my measurement markup tools, and I want to end in our markups list and talk about all the data that's being stored from these markups. So I'm going to close out of my tool chest here, open up my markups list down here at the bottom, and we can see all of the data that's being stored. So now notice, I have my subjects over here. Here's all my base measurements and my flooring measurements. I also have my label column located over here as well. Let's say, for example, I wanted to sort by my label. Maybe I want to see all of my different kinds of materials. If I select the label, that column is now going to become highlighted, and now I'm sorting everything by label. And then I can adjust if I want to see everything by date, by measurement, and so on. Now in my markups list, before I export all of this information as a summary, just like we did yesterday, notice that I have a measurement column here. For my measurement column, I can see the individual measurements for all of my carpets that I've measured so far. I can also see a total measurement highlighted up here at the top of that column. And the same applies for my baseboard as well. So in this case, I can see the individual measurements for each one of those markups, and I can also see total measurements highlighted at the top of the column. And in this case, I've also added a few custom columns. Now for my custom columns, this is also something that we heavily go into in our paid training courses. For today, I've already created those custom columns because I'd like to show an example of the kind of further actions that you can take and the data that you can get in your markups list. So in this case, I have the flooring column, or excuse me, the flooring cost column. So in this case, I have my flooring here. Here's my measurement for carpet 01. And this is going to be what we call a choice column. Notice that if I double click on the flooring cost option here, I can actually see I have multiple choices that I've already preloaded myself. I can see I have a few materials that I'm working with like concrete, ceramic tile, and there's my carpet 01 material. Now if I select on that carpet 01 material, I also have inputted a cost. So my carpet 01 is associated as $10.50 for square foot, or it's going to be square yard. Now for each one of mine, I can go down. Let's see, I want to install a flooring cost. There's my carpet 01. I'm going to double click and select carpet 01 to match. Now notice what happens. Now it's taking track. So now I have track of my flooring costs at $10.50 for square yards. And then I've also added a formula column at the very end called total cost. With my total cost, essentially I've created a formula to multiply these individual measurements by my cost column located here to result in a final number located over here. So I have those individual costs for each one of these different offices and a total cost highlighted up here at the top. So this is just a quick example of how powerful the markups list can be when it comes to also customizing your own columns, especially when you're working with measurements and formulas. I can create these custom columns, keep track of these prices and of these materials directly here in the markups list. And then of course, as always, another valuable aspect of this list is I can export all of this information out. So as I go through and finish up with my flooring costs, measure my total costs, how do I export all of this information? Today we'll be putting it into a CSV so that we can open it up on an Excel document. Well, our markups list summary is still going to be located right here. This is my summary icon. I'm going to choose on CSV today. This is a really good data-driven summary, so we'd see it's very popular, especially when performing quantity takeoffs and measurements. Once I select that option, you will notice that my markup summary report and my options are very similar to yesterday's as well. Over here on the left, I can choose what columns to include. So in this case, let's say I'm not working with statuses, so I don't need to see a status column or a color column on my Excel report. So I can just simply left click to remove those so I don't have to see them on my report. I can also filter and sort. So let's say I wanted to create an Excel report of just of my total carpet costs or just of my baseboard wood costs as well. I can filter based on those subjects that I've created or those labels that I've created as well. And then I can also choose how it's sorted. I'm going to go ahead and leave that default and have everything in my report sorted by label, technically sorted by material. And then I can adjust my output as well. So as a conclusion with my output, I want to make sure that this is exported as a CSV. It's going to be saved onto my desktop. This is going to be the file name. It's going to be Review 101 Takeoffs. And at the very bottom here, before I close out, I want to make sure that you also see here to include markups and totals. That's essentially going to include each one of my markup data as well as that highlighted total at the top. So if you're interested in the total cost or any total measurements, make sure that you click this selection, markups and totals. So this is going to be my configuration and how I'm going to create my report. Last thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and select OK. Revu is going to export all of this information out into my CSV. And then from there, it looks like it appeared on my laptop screen. So let me go ahead and click and drag that over here. And you're going to see I've now exported all that information into a CSV. So now I have my dates, my measurement column, my flooring cost, and my total cost column all located here as well. So now I can continue working with an Excel, adding my own additional columns as I need to. I can import this information into a spreadsheet that I currently utilize, and then go from there, essentially taking all that information that was recorded in Revu and putting it into an Excel document for me. Now that does conclude our 30 minutes for today in our Measurement Basics Bluebeam 101 webinar. So once again, I do want to thank all of you so much for joining me. I do just have a very quick conclusion before I let you go for today. As always, I hope that this was valuable. I hope that you were able to take away something new about Bluebeam Revu. As I always mention at the start of our course and at the conclusion, this webinar is just a very small portion of our training packages that are available for purchase. So if you have a group or department that's looking to get up to speed on Revu, we have live trainers like myself that can walk through different workflows of Revu, give you dedicated time to practice important features, and give you a chance to ask questions throughout the course directly to us. You can always contact training@bluebeam.com for more information on the trainings we offer, or also find the resources banner at bluebeam.com as well. Now, unlike all of our previous Bluebeam 101 webinars, we are giving everyone that's coming in access to Bluebeam University. So if you are an individual and you're looking to get up to speed, Bluebeam University is currently free for Revu 21 users, but if you are not a subscription user and would still like to try it out, keep an eye out in the GoToWebinar email for an access code that's going to give you access to Bluebeam University until the end of the year so that you can practice a lot of the things that you saw today. So you're going to be receiving that email and you'll have access to BBU up until the end of the year. Now, just as a second conclusion, we also launched our new certification. If you are looking to become a Bluebeam certified professional, you can find more information on that through that Bluebeam University link that we're sending out. Upon passing the Bluebeam Certified Professional exam, you're going to be rewarded with a digital badge that you can share on your LinkedIn as official Bluebeam Certified Professional. So keep an eye out. It's going to be in that Bluebeam University email that we'll send over. I'm going to keep the webinar open for just another minute or so to allow for any remaining questions or to wrap up any existing conversations currently happening in the questions window. There will also be 3 survey questions once you close out, and we'd very much appreciate you answering those before you leave for today. Once again, I hope this was valuable. Thank you all so much for attending, and please join me tomorrow as we dive into drawing management basics. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.